Hey guys, tonight we begin with what it was really like to wake up in medieval Europe. Imagine opening your eyes to find yourself sharing a bed with 6 family members, 2 chickens, and something that's either a dog or a very large rat. No alarm clock needed because the church bells are clanging at 4 a.m. Your straw mattress is literally moving with lice, and breakfast is yesterday's rock-hard bread soaked in ale because the water might kill you. Welcome to the Middle Ages, where life expectancy was maybe 40 if you're lucky, and every day was an obstacle course of disease, violence, and really questionable hygiene choices. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background. Hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Let's start with the moment you open your eyes in medieval Europe. Forget your memory foam mattress and Egyptian cotton sheets. You're waking up on what can generously be called a bed, really just a wooden frame if you're lucky, more likely a pile of straw on the dirt floor. And that straw? It's been there for months, maybe years, slowly decomposing while hosting an entire ecosystem of fleas, lice, bedbugs, and mice. The mattress moves when you do, and not because it's adjustable. You're not alone in this bed either. Personal space is a concept that won't exist for another 500 years. If you're a peasant, you're sharing this scratchy, bug-infested paradise with your spouse, all your children, maybe your parents, and on cold nights, the family pig. Yes, the pig. It's not a pet, it's a heating system with hooves. Everyone sleeps fully clothed because pajamas are for people who don't live in a one-room hut with gaps in the walls wide enough to throw a cat through. The smell hits you before you even fully wake up. It's a complex bouquet of human sweat, animal waste, smoke from the perpetually burning hearth, rotting straw, and something else you can't quite identify, but definitely died sometime last week. Your nose doesn't adjust to this. You just learn to breathe through your mouth. Which is worse because now you can taste it. The room is dark. Windows are for rich people, and even they just have wooden shutters or maybe oiled cloth. Glass? That's basically witchcraft. The only light comes from the dying embers of last night's fire, which someone needs to stoke immediately or everyone freezes. That someone is probably you, because medieval life operates on the principle that if you're awake, you're working. You sit up and immediately hit your head on the low beam that's been there every morning for the past decade, but somehow you never remember it. The floor is cold dirt, possibly mud if it rained last night, definitely containing things you don't want to step on barefoot. But shoes are for outside, and besides, you only own one pair, and they're more suggestion than footwear at this point. Your first task is to check if everyone survived the night. This isn't melodrama, it's practical. Between disease, infected wounds, and what passed for medical care, waking up alive was genuinely something to be grateful for. Your youngest has been coughing for 3 days. Is it a cold, or is it the beginning of something that doesn't have a cure? Because germ theory won't be invented for another 600 years, you'll find out soon enough. The church bells are ringing. In medieval times, these bells weren't just calling you to prayer, they were the entire community's clock, alarm system, and emergency broadcast network. Different patterns meant different things. Time for morning prayer, time for work, someone important died, Vikings are coming, the plague is here, or Thursday. You'd better learn the difference fast. You need to relieve yourself, which means a trip to the privy, a grand word for a hole in the ground if you're lucky, a specific corner of the yard if you're not. There's no toilet paper. There are leaves if it's summer, hay if you're near the barn, or your left hand, and a prayer if you're desperate. The Romans had running water and public toilets 1,000 years ago, but somehow humanity collectively forgot how plumbing worked. Progress isn't always linear. As you stumble outside, the full reality of your world hits you. The village is already stirring. Smoke rises from every hovel. Animals are making whatever noises they make when they're hungry, and your neighbor is already arguing with his wife about whose turn it is to collect firewood. The sun isn't up yet, won't be for another hour, but medieval life doesn't wait for daylight. You have maybe 12 hours to accomplish everything needed to survive another day. Your stomach reminds you that dinner last night was thin porridge with suspicious chunks, and breakfast will be the same porridge, now cold and somehow worse. But first you need water, which means a trip to the well you share with 30 other families, half of whom have various diseases that they're generously sharing via the communal bucket. Welcome to your medieval morning. It's 5 a.m., you're already exhausted, everything hurts, something definitely bit you in the night, and this is the good part of your day. It's all downhill from here. Now that you've survived waking up and managed not to fall into the privy, it's time for the most important meal of the day. Just kidding. Every meal in medieval times is equally terrible. But breakfast has its own special brand of culinary sadness that sets the tone for everything that follows. First, let's talk about what you're not eating. No coffee. It hasn't reached Europe yet. No tea either, unless you count whatever herbs your grandmother insists cure everything from headaches to demonic possession. No orange juice, no cereal, no eggs Benedict. What you have is ale. Yes, ale for breakfast, including for the children. Not because medieval people were party animals, but because water was basically a death lottery. Rivers were full of human waste, animal carcasses, and whatever the tannery upstream was dumping. Wells were contaminated by cesspits, so everyone drank ale, weak, sour, room-temperature ale that tastes like someone described beer to someone who'd never had beer. The main course is bread, and I use that term loosely. This isn't the artisanal sourdough at your local bakery. This is a dense, dark brick made from whatever grain didn't rot in storage: barley, rye, sometimes acorns or beans ground up when times were really tough. The local lord takes the good wheat, so peasants make do with what's left. The bread is often weeks old, hard enough to break teeth, which is problematic because medieval dental care consists of either suffering or having the blacksmith yank the tooth out with pliers. You soak the bread in your ale to soften it, creating a gray, mushy paste that would make prison food look gourmet. If you're lucky, there might be some cheese, though cheese is a generous term for what's essentially milk that's been left to its own devices until it develops a personality. The cheese has things growing on it that modern science would classify as biological weapons. If you're wealthy, and by wealthy I mean you own more than one cow, you might have some porridge. Not nice, creamy oatmeal with cinnamon and honey. This is gruel. Grain boiled in water until it reaches the consistency of warm paste. Sometimes there are vegetables mixed in: turnips, cabbage, onions, whatever survived the winter. Everything tastes like boiled disappointment. Meat for breakfast? Unless you're nobility or it's a special feast day, forget it. Peasants might eat meat a few times a year. The animals are too valuable alive: cows for milk and labor, chickens for eggs, pigs for, well, eventually for eating, but not until they've served their purpose as garbage disposals and emergency heating systems. When you do get meat, It's usually preserved in salt or smoke because refrigeration is centuries away. The salt content could mummify a pharaoh. Here's a fun fact. Medieval people believed in the hierarchy of food. Foods that grew high up, like fruits from trees, were for the upper classes. Foods that grew on the ground, vegetables, were for common people. Foods that grew underground, root vegetables, were for the lowest peasants. So your breakfast vegetables aren't just sad, they're literally considered beneath contempt. But wait, it gets worse. Everything is seasonal. No refrigeration means no preservation except drying, salting, or fermentation. Winter breakfast is the same gray porridge every single day. Summer might bring some variety, but it also brings flies. So many flies. They're in your ale, on your bread, laying eggs in anything that sits still for more than 10 seconds. You eat around them because protein is protein. The preparation is another adventure. Everything is cooked over an open fire, which means everything tastes like smoke. The pot hasn't been properly cleaned since it was made. You just keep adding new ingredients to whatever residue remains. That weird flavor in your porridge? That's last Tuesday's fish soup saying hello. Medieval cooking operates on the principle that heat kills most things, and what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, or at least builds up your immunity. You eat with your hands, or maybe a wooden spoon you carved yourself. Forks are considered effeminate and possibly satanic. You have a knife, but it's the same one you use for everything. Eating, working, defending yourself from bandits, and performing amateur surgery when needed. Plates are wooden trenchers, or, more often, just a thick slice of that rock-hard bread. You eat your meal off the bread, then eat the bread, which has now absorbed all the flavors of what was on it. It's recycling at its most unappetizing. The meal is communal, eaten in silence because talking wastes time and energy. Children eat last, getting whatever adults don't finish. There's no such thing as picky eating. You eat what's available or you starve. Food allergies, lactose intolerance, gluten sensitivity, these are modern luxuries. In medieval times, you either adapt or die, and your digestive system better get with the program. And here's the real kicker. This is breakfast for the lucky ones, the ones who have food. Famine is always just one bad harvest away. When crops fail, people eat bark, grass, and things that definitely aren't food but might fool your stomach for a few hours. Some resort to mixing sawdust with flour to make the bread last longer. Others just tighten their belts and hope they make it to next harvest. You finish your meal, such as it is, and wipe your mouth with your sleeve because napkins are centuries away from being invented. Your stomach is full of something that vaguely resembles food, your teeth hurt from the bread, and you can already feel your digestive system gearing up for a day of protests. But you're alive, you're fed, and in medieval terms, that makes this a good morning. Time to go to work. And trust me, whatever your job is, it's going to make that breakfast seem like the highlight of your day. Now that you've choked down your morning gruel and ale, it's time for the main event of medieval life. Backbreaking labor that starts before sunrise and ends after sunset. Every single day except Sunday, and even then, you're probably sneaking in some work because starvation doesn't respect the Sabbath. Let's say you're a peasant farmer, which statistically you probably are. About 90% of medieval people worked the land. Your job isn't just farming, it's everything. You're a farmer, veterinarian, carpenter, roofer, and your own undertaker when the time comes. The modern concept of specialization? That's for city folk and people who don't need to survive winter. First up, the fields. You don't own them, of course. The land belongs to Lord whatever his name is, who lives in the castle you can see in the distance. the one with actual walls and a roof that doesn't leak. You work his land, give him most of what you grow, and in return, he graciously allows you to not be murdered by Vikings. It's a protection racket that makes the mafia look reasonable. Your farming equipment is state-of-the-art for the 600s, which means it's basically sharp rocks tied to sticks. If you're lucky, you have an iron plow blade, but more likely you're using a wooden plow that you have to repair constantly. You're pushing this thing yourself unless you're wealthy enough to own an ox, in which case you're guiding an enormous, stubborn animal that has its own ideas about where to go and when to work. The technique? You walk behind this plow from sunrise to sunset, turning over soil that's more rock than earth, trying to create straight furrows while your back screams in protest. There's no ergonomic anything. Your spine is slowly reshaping itself into a question mark. By age 30, you'll walk permanently hunched, but that's a problem for future you, assuming you live that long. But wait, before you can plow, you need to clear the field. That means removing every rock, and medieval fields generate rocks like a video game spawns enemies. You pick them up, carry them to the edge of the field, and build stone walls. Tomorrow, new rocks will have magically appeared. It's like Sisyphus, but with more calluses and less philosophical meaning. If you're a woman, your day is somehow even worse. You're doing everything men do, plus managing the household, which in medieval times means you're basically running a small factory. You're spinning thread, weaving cloth, making clothes, preserving food, brewing ale, making cheese, tending the vegetable garden, feeding animals, hauling water, keeping the fire going, and somehow also raising 8 children, half of whom won't see their 5th birthday. The water alone is a full-time job. Every drop your family needs must be hauled from the well, which is a quarter-mile away and shared with everyone in the village, including their animals. A family needs about 40 gallons a day for drinking, cooking, and basic washing. That's 320 pounds of water you're carrying, bucket by bucket, every single day. Your arms look like tree trunks, but your back is held together by pure determination and prayer. Child labor? That's not exploitation, that's Tuesday. Kids start working as soon as they can walk. By age 7, they're in the fields scaring birds away from crops. By 10, they're doing adult work. Childhood is a modern invention. In medieval times, you're either a baby or a small adult with all the responsibilities and none of the rights. Let's talk about the actual crops. You're growing whatever keeps you alive through winter. Grain for bread, vegetables that store well, and maybe some herbs that might be medicine or might be seasoning. Nobody's really sure. You're using techniques that haven't changed since the Romans because innovation is viewed with suspicion. That new farming method might be witchcraft, and you do not want to be the village test case for agricultural experimentation. The 3-field system is revolutionary technology. You plant one field with winter crops, one with summer crops, and leave one empty to recover. Except, empty doesn't mean you ignore it. You're spreading manure, letting animals graze, constantly working it. There's no such thing as time off. Weather is your enemy. Too much rain, crops rot. Not enough rain, crops die. Perfect amount of rain? Great. Here come the locusts or a hailstorm or a late frost or any of the dozen other things that can destroy a year's work in an afternoon. And when crops fail, you don't just lose money, you lose life. Famine isn't an abstract concept. It's your child's ribs showing through their skin. Break time, lunch, those are funny words you just made up. You might pause to eat some bread and cheese in the field, washing it down with more of that breakfast ale. You eat standing up because sitting down means you might not get back up. Your muscles are already cramping, Your joints are on fire, but the sun is high and there's still 8 hours of work ahead. But farming is the easy job. Maybe you're a miller, breathing flour dust until your lungs look like pastries. Maybe you're a tanner, spending your days elbow deep in urine and feces because that's how you make leather. The smell is so bad that tanners have to live outside town. Your neighbors avoid you. Your spouse can barely stand to be near you, but hey, at least you have job security because people need leather and nobody else wants to do it. Or you're a blacksmith, which sounds cool until you realize you're spending 12 hours a day next to a forge that's roughly the temperature of the sun, swinging a hammer that weighs more than a modern laptop, creating sparks that regularly set things on fire, including occasionally yourself. Your arms are massive, your hearing is shot from the constant hammering, and you're probably missing a few fingers, because safety equipment is for people who haven't accepted that life is suffering. Maybe you work in construction, building those magnificent cathedrals that take 200 years to complete. You're hauling stones that weigh more than a car, climbing scaffolding made of rope and hope, mixing mortar with your bare hands because gloves are for weaklings. The medieval construction site has a casualty rate that would shut down a modern company in minutes. Fall from scaffolding? Crushed by a stone? Part of the job. They'll bury you in the foundation and keep building. The workday doesn't end when the sun sets. There's still animals to feed, tools to repair, firewood to chop, and a dozen other tasks that need doing before you can collapse into your flea-infested bed. You work by candlelight, except candles are expensive. So really you work by the light of the fire, squinting and hoping you don't accidentally chop off something important. Workplace safety? Workers' rights? Overtime pay? These concepts are so foreign they might as well be from another planet. You work until the work is done or until you physically can't anymore. If you're injured, you keep working because there's no disability insurance, just disability and starvation. Lost a finger in the mill? Congratulations, you're now 9-Finger John, can't work anymore? Hope you have family willing to feed you because society has no safety net, just a very deep hole. By the time you finally stop working, it's been 14 hours of constant physical labor. Your hands are raw, your back is screaming, your knees barely function. Tomorrow you'll do it all again, and again, and again, until you die, which statistically will be soon, probably from something completely preventable but currently incurable, like an infected splinter or caught in the rain too long. This is your career. There's no advancement, no retirement plan, no vacation days. You'll do this same work in these same fields with these same tools until your body finally gives out. And when it does, your children will take over, continuing the exact same cycle. Because in medieval times, social mobility isn't just rare, it's basically mythology. But hey, at least you're not working in the mines. Those people rarely see sunlight and usually die before 30 from breathing rock dust, so you've got that going for you, which is nice. All right, you've survived another day of back-breaking labor, and you're covered in a delightful combination of sweat, dirt, animal droppings, and various unidentifiable substances. Time to get clean. Just kidding. You're never getting clean. Welcome to medieval hygiene, where bathing is an annual event and deodorant is centuries away from being invented. Let's start with the basics. Water. Remember how drinking water could kill you? Well, bathing in it wasn't much safer. Public bathhouses existed in some cities, but they had a reputation somewhere between disease-breeding ground and straight-up brothel. The church actually discouraged bathing because being naked, even alone, was considered sinful. Also, people believed that bathing opened your pores and let disease in. Yes, they thought being dirty was literally healthier than being clean. So how often did medieval people bathe? The wealthy might manage once a month. Peasants? Maybe twice a year, usually before Easter and before winter. And by bathe, I don't mean a relaxing soak in a tub. I mean standing in a wooden barrel while someone dumps lukewarm water over you, if you're lucky. More likely, you're taking a dip in the local river, the same river where everyone washes their clothes, waters their animals, and disposes of their waste. It's like bathing in soup, if soup was made of cholera and regret. But surely they wash their hands and face daily? Kind of. You might splash some water on your face in the morning, using the same basin everyone else in your household uses. Soap exists, but it's made from animal fat and ash, smells worse than what it's trying to clean, and is so harsh it takes your skin off along with the dirt. Most people just use water and friction, rubbing their hands with sand or ashes when they're really dirty. Now let's talk about teeth. You know that fuzzy feeling your teeth get when you skip brushing for a day? Imagine that, but for your entire life. Toothbrushes don't exist. Some people chew on twigs to clean their teeth, others use rough cloth with salt or chalk. The wealthy might have tooth powders made from burned rosemary or crushed eggshells, but mostly teeth just rot. By age 30, you're missing half of them. By 40, if you live that long, you're gumming your food like a very tired baby. The breath situation is apocalyptic. Everyone has halitosis that could strip paint. Combine rotting teeth, infected gums, and a diet of preserved meat and fermented vegetables, and you get breath that's technically classified as a weapon. Kissing must have been an act of true love or complete desperation. Hair care is another adventure in horror. Washing your hair is rare because it takes forever to dry, and wet hair is believed to cause headaches, insanity, and various other ailments. Instead, people use powders to absorb oil, combs to remove lice, spoiler, the lice always win, and sometimes wash their hair with lye, which is so alkaline it dissolves the hair along with the dirt. Baldness is common, partly from genetics, but mostly from hygiene products that are basically chemical weapons. For women, the beauty standards are insane. Pale skin is desirable, so they use lead-based makeup that slowly poisons them. The forehead should be high, so they pluck their hairlines back, sometimes burning the hair follicles with quicklime. Eyebrows should be thin, so those get plucked too. By the time a medieval woman is beautiful, she looks like a possibly radioactive alien. Body hair? Everyone's got it and it's staying. Shaving is dangerous with medieval razors, which are basically sharp knives that seem designed to remove more skin than hair. Some women remove body hair with tweezers, one hair at a time, like some kind of sadistic meditation, or with concoctions made from cat poop and vinegar. I wish I was making that up. Now the big question, what about down there? Let's just say that medieval underwear, when it exists at all, is changed about as often as outer clothes, which is to say almost never. Women use rags during their periods, washing and reusing them when possible. Everyone's walking around with a situation downstairs that would require a hazmat team by modern standards. Deodorant hasn't been invented, so everyone smells. The rich douse themselves in perfumes made from flowers, herbs, and animal secretions. Yes, really. But perfume doesn't eliminate body odor. It just creates a new, that somehow worse smell. Imagine BO mixed with rotting flowers and whale vomit, a real perfume ingredient. And you're getting close. The lice and flea situation deserves its own horror movie. Everyone has lice. Everyone. It's so normal that people have specialized combs for removing them, and delousing is a social activity. Families sit around picking lice off each other like grooming monkeys, except less effective. Fleas are everywhere, in your clothes, your bed, your hair. They carry plague, but nobody knows that yet. They just know that everyone itches all the time. Skin conditions are rampant. Without proper hygiene, every small cut can become infected. Acne, eczema, psoriasis, and various rashes are common and untreatable. The medical solution for most skin problems is either rub some herbs on it or must be demons. Neither works particularly well. Laundry is a monthly event at best. Clothes are worn until they can practically walk on their own. When washing finally happens, it involves beating clothes against rocks in the river, using lye that's so caustic it dissolves both stains and fabric. Clothes come back cleaner, but significantly smaller and more hole-filled than before. The chamber pot situation is its own special nightmare. Every morning, someone has to empty the family's collected waste. In cities, this often means opening the window and shouting "Garde à l'eau," from the French, "Garde l'eau," watch out for the water, before flinging the contents into the street. Walking under windows is extreme sports. The streets are open sewers, and the smell is so bad that people carry pouches of herbs to hold over their noses. Public toilets are communal experiences where you sit on a long bench with holes cut in it, doing your business next to complete strangers. Privacy doesn't exist. Toilet paper doesn't exist. You use leaves, moss, shells, or a communal sponge on a stick that's been used by dozens of people before you. I'll let that image sink in. Here's the truly horrifying part. This is normal. Nobody thinks they're living in filth because everyone lives in filth. The baseline for clean is so low it's basically underground. A medieval person transported to modern times would probably think we're all misophobic wizards with our daily showers and toothbrushing. The crazy thing is, some medieval people did figure out cleanliness. Islamic cultures had advanced hygiene practices, regular bathing, and even toothbrushes. But in Christian Europe, being too clean was suspicious. You might be Jewish or Muslim, and that could get you burned at the stake. So people stayed dirty partly out of ignorance, partly out of self-preservation. By the end of a typical day, you're carrying around layers of sweat, dirt, grease, and who knows what else. Your clothes are stiff with grime. Your hair is an ecosystem. Your teeth hurt, your skin itches, and you smell like a garbage fire in a gym sock. And tomorrow, you'll add another layer to the collection. This is medieval hygiene, where being clean isn't just impossible, it's potentially heretical, where everyone smells so bad that nobody notices. So you've been living your medieval life, working yourself to exhaustion, eating questionable food, and maintaining hygiene standards that would horrify a sewer rat. Inevitably, you're going to get sick or injured. Time to experience medieval medicine, where the cure is usually worse than the disease, and your doctor might also be your barber, your dentist, and the guy who shoes your horse. Let's start with medical theory. Medieval doctors, and I use that term loosely, believe illness is caused by an imbalance of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. These need to be in perfect balance, like some kind of internal chemistry set. Feeling sad? Too much black bile. Angry? Yellow bile. Sneezing? Phlegm, obviously. The solution to every problem is to remove whatever humor you have too much of, usually through methods that would be considered torture in any other context. The most popular treatment is bloodletting. Feeling sick? Let's drain some blood. Broke your leg? Better drain some blood. Depressed? Blood drainage will fix that right up. They use leeches, which is actually the least terrible option, or they just cut you open and let you bleed into a bowl. There are actually charts showing which vein to open for which ailment. It's like acupuncture, if acupuncture involved massive blood loss and a high chance of death. The tools are nightmare fuel. Surgical instruments haven't been sterilized because germ theory won't exist for another 600 years. That saw they're using to amputate your gangrenous leg? It was just used on the last patient who died. But don't worry, they wiped it on their apron, which hasn't been washed since the plague of Justinian. Anesthesia? That's a shot of strong liquor if you're lucky, a wooden stick to bite on if you're not. Surgery is performed while you're fully conscious, held down by strong men while the barber surgeon hacks away at whatever offending body part needs removing. The screaming is considered normal. Survival is considered miraculous. But maybe you don't need surgery. Maybe you just have a headache. The medieval cure? Trepanation. Drilling a hole in your skull to let the evil spirits out. Yes, they literally drill through your skull with a hand drill while you're awake. Somehow, some people actually survive this, which medieval doctors take as proof that it works. Got a cold? Here's a mixture of mercury, lead, and arsenic. Stomach problems? Try this potion made from ground-up mummies. Yes, actual mummies. Egyptian mummies were ground into powder and sold as medicine. It doesn't work, obviously, but it does add cursed by ancient pharaohs to your list of problems. Women's health care is especially horrifying. Childbirth is the leading cause of death for women, and the medical assistance available makes it worse, not better. Midwives might know some helpful herbs, but they're also likely to suggest things like hold a magnet to attract the baby out, or drink horse urine to speed labor. If something goes wrong during childbirth, the tools available are basically hooks and prayers. Mental illness? That's clearly demonic possession. The cure involves exorcism, beating, or drilling more holes in your skull. Depression is treated with prayer and fasting, because clearly what you need when you're too sad to function is less food. Epilepsy? Also demons. The cure is to carry a piece of a hanged man's skull, which raises so many questions about the medical supply chain. Dental care deserves special mention. Tooth pain? The barber surgeon will yank it out with pliers, no anesthetic, while you're held down in a chair. Infected tooth? Might kill you, since the infection can spread to your brain. The real kicker? They believe cavities are caused by tooth worms. Tiny worms eating your teeth from the inside. The cure involves smoking the worms out with candles or filling the cavity with more lead. The plague years bring out the worst in medieval medicine. Doctors wear those creepy bird masks filled with herbs, believing bad smells cause disease and good smells prevent it. They lance buboes, plague sores, with dirty knives, spreading the infection faster. They prescribe drinking mercury or eating crushed emeralds, if you're rich. When none of this works, they blame the patient for not praying hard enough. Here's where it gets really dark. Some cures are based on sympathetic magic, the idea that like cures like. Got bit by a dog? Put the dog's hair in the wound. Stabbed? Leave the knife in, but make sure to regularly anoint the knife with healing ointment. Not the wound, the knife. Yellow skin? Eat yellow things. It's medicine by color matching. The human body is barely understood. They think the heart is where thoughts come from and the brain is just skull stuffing. They believe men have one fewer rib than women because of the Adam and Eve story. Anatomy lessons involve maybe one dissection a year, usually of an executed criminal, while someone reads from a medical text written by Greeks who also didn't know what they were looking at. Herbal medicine is the one bright spot, kind of. All right, you've survived another day of back-breaking labor, and you're covered in a delightful combination of sweat, dirt, animal droppings, and various unidentifiable substances. Time to get clean. Just kidding. You're never getting clean. Welcome to medieval hygiene, where bathing is an annual event and deodorant is centuries away from being invented. Let's start with the basics. Water. Remember how drinking water could kill you? Well, bathing in it wasn't much safer. Public bathhouses existed in some cities, but they had a reputation somewhere between disease breeding ground and straight up brothel. The church actually discouraged bathing because being naked, even alone, was considered sinful. Also, people believed that bathing opened your pores and let disease in. Yes, they thought being dirty was literally healthier than being clean. So how often did medieval people bathe? The wealthy might manage once a month. Peasants? Maybe twice a year, usually before Easter and before winter. And by bathe, I don't mean a relaxing soak in a tub. I mean standing in a wooden barrel while someone dumps lukewarm water over you, if you're lucky. More likely, you're taking a dip in the local river, the same river where everyone washes their clothes, waters their animals, and disposes of their waste. It's like bathing in soup, if soup was made of cholera and regret. But surely they wash their hands and face daily? Kind of. You might splash some water on your face in the morning, using the same basin everyone else in your household uses. Soap exists, but it's made from animal fat and ash, smells worse than what it's trying to clean, and is so harsh it takes your skin off along with the dirt. Most people just use water and friction, rubbing their hands with sand or ashes when they're really dirty. Now let's talk about teeth. You know that fuzzy feeling your teeth get when you skip brushing for a day? Imagine that, but for your entire life. Toothbrushes don't exist. Some people chew on twigs to clean their teeth, others use rough cloth with salt or chalk. The wealthy might have tooth powders made from burned rosemary or crushed eggshells, but mostly teeth just rot. By age 30, you're missing half of them. By 40, if you live that long, you're gumming your food like a very tired baby. The breath situation is apocalyptic. Everyone has halitosis that could strip paint. Combine rotting teeth, infected gums, and a diet of preserved meat and fermented vegetables, and you get breath that's technically classified as a weapon. Kissing must have been an act of true love or complete desperation. Hair care is so you've been living your medieval life, trying to survive the food, the work, and the medical care, when suddenly you find yourself accused of a crime. Maybe you stole a loaf of bread because you're starving. Maybe your neighbor's cow died and they've decided you cursed it. Maybe you looked at the Lord's daughter for 2 seconds too long. Doesn't matter. You're about to experience medieval justice, where innocent until proven guilty is a concept that won't exist for another 500 years. First, let's understand how medieval law works. There's no unified legal system. Every little area has its own laws, its own courts, its own punishments. The lord of the manor can basically make up laws as he goes along. The church has its own courts for moral crimes. The king has his courts for serious stuff. The town has courts for trade disputes. It's like having 4 different legal systems operating in the same place, none of them talking to each other. All of them corrupt. Getting arrested is an informal affair. There's no police force. Law enforcement is handled by whoever's around, the Lord's men, angry villagers, or that guy who just really doesn't like you. They don't need a warrant. They don't need probable cause. They just need to grab you and drag you to whoever's in charge of justice this week. The trial, if you can call it that, is nothing like what you see on TV. There's no jury of your peers unless your peers are the same people who accused you. There's no defense attorney. You defend yourself, assuming you're allowed to speak at all. The judge might be the Lord who profits from fining you, or a traveling judge who doesn't know local customs and doesn't care. Evidence? That's a funny word. Medieval trials run on accusation, reputation, and whether the judge had a good breakfast. Witness testimony is huge, but anyone can be a witness. Your neighbor who hates you because your pig got into his garden? Star witness. That guy who owes you money, he's testifying too. Children, criminals, people with obvious mental illness, all valid witnesses. The only people who can't testify are women, too emotional, Jews, wrong religion, and excommunicated people, spiritually canceled. But here's where it gets really weird. Trial by ordeal. When evidence is unclear, which is always, they let God decide your guilt. Trial by water, they tie you up and throw you in a river. If you float, you're guilty. Water rejects sinners. If you sink, you're innocent. Hope someone pulls you out before you drown, proving your innocence to your corpse. Trial by fire is another favorite. Hold a red-hot iron bar, walk 9 paces, drop it. They bandage your hand and check it 3 days later. If it's healing nicely, you're innocent. God protected you. If it's infected, which it always is because medieval medicine, you're guilty. Sometimes they make you walk on hot plowshares or reach into boiling water to grab a stone. God apparently loves third-degree burns. Trial by combat is for the upper classes or serious crimes. You and your accuser fight, sometimes to the death. God gives victory to the righteous. Obviously. Can't fight because you're elderly, disabled, or a woman? You can hire a champion, if you can afford one. Your champion loses? You're guilty and probably dead, since the penalty for losing is often execution anyway. For clerics accused of crimes, there's compurgation. Swear your innocence and get 12 people to swear you're telling the truth. These oath helpers don't testify about the crime, they just swear you're not the type to lie. It's basically trial by having friends, which works great unless you're unpopular. Let's talk punishments, because medieval justice isn't about rehabilitation. It's about making an example. For minor crimes, you might get fined. Except the fine goes to the Lord, not the victim. And if you can't pay, it's physical punishment time. The pillory and stocks are the mild option. You're locked in wooden restraints in the town square while people throw rotten vegetables, rocks, and various bodily fluids at you. Hours in the summer sun or winter cold, unable to defend yourself, while the entire town takes out their frustrations on your immobilized form. People have died from mild punishment. Whipping is common for theft, adultery, or being too poor to pay fines. Not a few symbolic lashes. We're talking skin-flaying, muscle-exposing whipping that leaves permanent scars. Women are stripped to the waist and whipped through the streets because humiliation is part of the punishment. Mutilation is for repeat offenders. Steal once, whipping, steal twice, lose a hand, lie in court, tongue cut out. Poaching the Lord's deer, blinding because you won't need eyes in the afterlife. These aren't clean surgical amputations. They're done with dirty axes in the town square while you're fully conscious. Branding is popular too. A hot iron marks your crime on your face or hand forever. T for thief, B for blasphemer, F for fighter. You're now a walking advertisement for your worst moment, guaranteeing you'll never get honest work again, which pretty much ensures you'll turn to crime, which means more punishments. It's a system. For serious crimes, death comes in various creative forms. Hanging is the classic, but it's not the quick drop that breaks your neck. It's slow strangulation, dancing on air while the crowd watches. It takes up to 20 minutes sometimes. Your family has to pay for the rope. Women who kill their husbands get burned alive, because that's apparently worse than regular murder. Heretics also burn. So do witches, once that panic starts. Burning is slow, horrific, and public. Sometimes they strangle you first if the crowd likes you. Usually they don't. Traitors get the full treatment, hanged until almost dead, cut down, disemboweled while still alive, beheaded, then quartered. The pieces are displayed around town as a warning. This is considered completely normal entertainment for the whole family. But wait, there's more. Forfeiture means if you're convicted, the Lord takes all your property. Your family is now homeless and destitute. Corruption of blood means your children inherit your criminal status. Outlawry means you're kicked out of society's protection. Anyone can kill you without penalty, like you're a human hunting season. The church has its own punishments. Excommunication doesn't sound bad until you realize it means no sacraments, no burial in consecrated ground, no interaction with Christians. In a world where everyone is Christian and going to hell is a real fear, it's social and spiritual death. Penance might involve crawling on your knees to a shrine, fasting until you hallucinate, or wearing a hair shirt that slowly drives you insane with itching. Here's the kicker. There's no appeal process. The Lord's word is final. The church's word is final. If you're tortured into confessing, that confession stands. Torture isn't a bug in the system, it's a feature. They have detailed manuals on how to torture effectively without killing the subject too quickly. The inequality is staggering. A noble who murders a peasant pays a fine. A peasant who steals from a noble loses a hand or worse. The same crime has wildly different punishments based on who you are, who the victim is, what day it is, and whether the judge's gout is acting up. False accusations are rampant because accusers often get part of the fine or the accused's property. Your neighbor wants your land, accuse you of heresy. Your rival merchant undercuts your prices, must be using witchcraft. The system incentivizes lying. And enforcement? Brutal, but inconsistent. You might get away with murder if no one important cares, or you might hang for stealing a chicken if you do it on the wrong day. Justice is random, cruel, and corrupt. The only consistent rule is that the powerful win and the powerless suffer. Modern people complain about the legal system being slow or unfair. Medieval peasants would kill and risk the consequences for the right to a lawyer, a jury trial, or the concept of reasonable doubt. In medieval times, justice isn't blind. She's peeking to see who has more money and deciding accordingly. So next time you get a parking ticket, remember, at least they're not chopping off your hand for it. Progress. Congratulations. You've been conscripted into your Lord's army. Doesn't matter that you've never held a weapon more dangerous than a farming tool. Doesn't matter that you have crops to harvest and a family to feed. The Lord is having a dispute with his neighbor about who owns that hill with 3 trees on it, and somehow this is now your problem. Welcome to medieval warfare, where peasants die so nobles can add lines to their family trees. First, let's dispel some myths. Medieval battles weren't heroic charges of shining knights. They were muddy, chaotic slaughters where poorly equipped farmers tried not to die while rich people in metal suits played violent chess. You're not going to be a knight. That requires money, training from childhood, and being born into the right family. You're going to be cannon fodder, except cannons haven't been invented yet. So you're more like arrow fodder, or guy who gets stabbed while the knight behind you does something heroic. Your equipment? Remember that knife you use for everything? That's your weapon now. If you're lucky, the Lord might provide a spear, which is just a knife tied to a long stick. Armor? Your regular clothes, plus maybe a leather cap that's been passed down through 12 dead soldiers and never washed. The smell alone might protect you better than the leather. Training consists of marching in roughly the same direction as everyone else and trying to hold your spear pointy end forward. There's no boot camp, no drill sergeant, no actual instruction. They hand you a weapon and hope your farming muscles and fear of death will figure out the rest. The guy next to you has never held a spear either. The guy behind you is actively crying. This is your unit. The march to battle is often worse than the battle itself. You walk for days, sometimes weeks, in whatever shoes you own, carrying everything on your back. Food, whatever you brought from home, plus whatever you can steal from farms you pass. The army moves like a locust swarm, stripping the countryside bare. Those are your fellow peasants' crops you're stealing. But it's that, or starve before you even reach the fight. Disease kills more soldiers than combat. Camp hygiene makes your village look like a Swiss hospital. Hundreds of men shitting wherever, no clean water, everyone sharing the same few cups and bowls. Dysentery runs through the camp faster than cavalry. You call it the flux because naming it accurately would require understanding germs, which won't happen for centuries. Men drop dead from fever, infected blisters, or eating meat that's been carried in a leather bag for 2 weeks. When battle finally comes, it's nothing like the stories. First, there's waiting. Hours of standing in formation while nobles negotiate, priests bless things, and everyone tries not to think about what's coming. You can see the enemy across the field. They look exactly like you, terrified farmers holding pointy sticks. The actual fighting is pure chaos. Arrows rain down randomly. You can't see them coming, just hear the whistle and thud as they hit shields, earth, or steve from 2 villages over. You're pressed so tight against other men you can barely breathe. When the lines meet, it's not graceful swordplay. It's shoving, stabbing, trampling. You can't see past the man in front of you. You don't know if you're winning or losing. You just push forward and try to keep your spear pointed at something that isn't wearing your colors. The noise is incredible. Thousands of men screaming, metal hitting metal, horses shrieking, horns blowing commands no one can understand. Orders? Good luck hearing them. You just do what everyone else is doing and hope it's right. If your line breaks and runs, you run too, because standing your ground alone isn't heroic. It's suicide. Here's a fun fact. Most casualties happen during the retreat. Once an army breaks, it becomes a hunt. Cavalry ride down fleeing infantry like it's sport. You drop your weapon to run faster, drop your shield, drop everything except the will to live. If you're caught, you're dead. Noble prisoners might be ransomed. You're not worth the food to keep you alive. If you somehow survive the battle, congratulations. Your reward is looting the dead. This isn't glorious either. You're pulling boots off corpses, searching pockets for coins, trying not to think about how this could have been you. The wounded who can't ransom themselves? They get a knife to the throat. Mercy is a luxury no one can afford. Siege warfare is even worse. Instead of one terrible day, it's months of terrible days. You're either inside the castle slowly starving, or outside slowly dying of disease while trying to starve the people inside. Siege equipment, you're building it while arrows rain down. That battering ram needs someone to swing it, and that someone is you and 20 other expendable peasants. Defenders pour boiling oil, water, or just rocks on your head. Crossbow bolts punch through your armor like it's paper. If you're really unlucky, you're in the first wave climbing the ladders. Life expectancy about 30 seconds. If you make it to the top, a knight pushes you off with a pole. If you somehow get over the wall, you're one peasant with a knife facing trained garrison troops. Good luck with that. Mining under walls means digging in the dark, knowing the tunnel could collapse any second. The defenders are countermining, trying to break into your tunnel and kill you underground. It's fighting in a grave you dug yourself. If you succeed in bringing down the wall, guess who charges through the breach first? Not the nobles in their expensive armor. Naval warfare adds drowning to your list of death options. You can't swim, no one can. Fall overboard in armor and you sink like a stone. Ships ram each other, men board with axes and clubs, and the deck becomes a slippery mess of blood and seawater. If your ship catches fire, you choose between burning or drowning. Most choose drowning. The knights, those symbols of medieval warfare? They're not noble protectors. They're mounted tanks operated by rich sociopaths. A charging knight will ride you down without a second thought. You're not even worth slowing down for. Your spear might stop a horse if you're incredibly lucky, and the knight is incredibly stupid. Usually, you just die tired. After battle, if you're wounded, medieval medicine awaits. Arrow in your shoulder, they'll push it through because pulling it out does more damage. Sword cut, cauterized with hot iron. Broken bones, set by a barber who learned anatomy from animals. Infection is almost guaranteed. Antibiotics are centuries away. Most wounded die slowly over days or weeks, fever dreaming in their own filth. Here's the real tragedy. You're fighting for nothing. That hill with 3 trees doesn't affect your life at all. The Lord wins, your taxes stay the same. The Lord loses, your taxes stay the same but to a different guy. You risk everything for someone else's property dispute. The nobles who start these wars rarely die in them. They're ransomed if captured, treated well, exchanged like baseball cards. You're fertilizer. The glory of medieval warfare is pure propaganda. There's no glory in dying face down in mud because 2 rich people couldn't agree on who owned a vineyard. There's no honor in being arrow fodder while knights prance around in armor worth more than your village. There's just fear, chaos, and the desperate hope that you'll live to see your turnip field again. If you do make it home, you're changed. Maybe missing fingers, maybe missing friends, definitely missing any illusions about the nobility of war. You've seen what humans do to each other with sharp metal and official permission. You've learned that heroism is mostly about being too poor to avoid conscription. But don't worry. In a few years, the Lord will have another dispute, and you'll get to do it all over again. If you survived once, clearly you're good at this. Never mind the nightmares, the old wounds that ache, the way you flinch at sudden noises. There's always another war, another noble feud, another chance to die for absolutely nothing. Medieval warfare, where peasants go to die so nobles can redraw maps. It's like chess if chess pieces could scream and had families waiting for them to come home. Let's talk about what it was like to be a woman in medieval times. And spoiler alert, it was somehow even worse than being a man. Which is really saying something given everything we've covered so far. Take all the disease, filth, and back-breaking labor we've discussed, then add systematic oppression, constant pregnancy, and the delightful possibility of being burned as a witch if you're too good at brewing ale. Welcome to medieval womanhood, where your life expectancy is even shorter than men's, and your list of rights fits on a grain of rice. From the moment you're born female, you're a disappointment. Not personal disappointment. Your parents might love you, but economic disappointment. A son can work the fields, inherit property, carry on the family name. A daughter? She's another mouth to feed until you can marry her off. And then you have to pay a dowry for someone to take her. You're essentially a living debt that will eventually be transferred to another man's household. Your childhood isn't childhood. By age 4 or 5, you're working. Watching younger siblings, feeding chickens, gathering eggs, helping with cooking. Boys might get a few years of church schooling if the family can spare them from field work. Girls? Education is for people who matter. You'll learn everything you need to know from your mother. How to cook gruel 40 different ways. They're all terrible. How to spin thread until your fingers bleed. And how to suffer in silence. Marriage happens young. Really young. 12 is marriageable age, and that's not a suggestion. It's often a requirement. Your husband is chosen by your father based on complex calculations involving land, livestock, and local politics. Love? That's a luxury for people in songs. You might meet your husband for the first time at your wedding, which is less magical day and more livestock transaction with religious overtones. Your new husband could be 15 or 50. Doesn't matter. The moment you're married, you become his property. Legally, you cease to exist as a separate person. Everything you own becomes his. Every penny you earn becomes his. Your body becomes his. The concept of marital rape doesn't exist because how can you rape your own property? The church says refusing your husband is a sin. He can beat you as long as he doesn't permanently maim you. And even then, what are you going to do? Divorce doesn't exist unless you're nobility and the Pope personally intervenes. Let's talk about pregnancy, your new full-time job. You'll be pregnant approximately once every 2 years from marriage until menopause or death, whichever comes first, usually death. No birth control except unreliable herbal remedies that might kill you. No understanding of ovulation cycles, just constant pregnancy with a body that never fully recovers between babies. Childbirth is the leading cause of death for women. You have a 1 in 3 chance of dying in childbirth over your lifetime, not in a single birth, a cumulative risk over all your pregnancies. The medical care involves midwives who might know some helpful herbs, but also believe in things like the baby won't come out because it's scared of the noise, or difficult birth means the woman sinned. Labor happens at home, on the same straw mattress where you sleep. No pain relief except biting on leather. If the baby is breech or stuck, the midwife has tools that look like torture devices because that's essentially what they are. Cesarean sections exist, but only to save the baby after you're dead or dying. Survival rate, 0%. If you survive childbirth, congratulations. Now you have to keep the baby alive with no formula, no sterilization, no understanding of germs. Breastfeeding while malnourished yourself, trying to produce enough milk while surviving on bread and ale. About half your children will die before age 5. This isn't a statistic, it's your life, losing child after child to diseases that later centuries will prevent with a simple shot. Between pregnancies, you work. Not gentle household management, brutal physical labor. You're up before dawn to start the fire, hauling water from the well, each bucket weighing 40 pounds. Cooking over open flame with no temperature control, constantly bent over, smoke in your eyes. Washing clothes means hauling them to the river, beating them on rocks, hauling them back wet and twice as heavy. You make everything from scratch. Bread starts with grinding grain by hand. Cheese starts with milking cows at 4 a.m. Clothes start with shearing sheep, carding wool, spinning thread, weaving cloth, cutting, sewing. A single shirt takes weeks of labor. Your fingers are permanently stained, calloused, often bleeding from the constant work. But wait, you also work in the fields, planting, weeding, harvesting alongside men, except you're probably pregnant or nursing while doing it. During harvest, everyone works sun up to sundown. You're binding sheaves with a baby strapped to your back, hoping it doesn't cry too much and slow you down. Your husband's authority is absolute. He controls the money, makes all decisions, can forbid you from leaving the house. If he's a drunk who beats you, that's your cross to bear. If he gambles away the family savings, you'd better work harder to make up for it. If he dies, you'd better hope you have adult sons, because a widow without male protection is vulnerable to everything from starvation to accusations of witchcraft. Speaking of witchcraft, let's discuss that fun possibility. Too successful at brewing? Witch. Your neighbor's cow dies after you argued? Witch. You know too much about herbs? Definitely a witch. Old and living alone? Witch. Young and too pretty? Also witch. The accusations usually come during times of stress, failed harvests, disease outbreaks. Someone needs to blame, and unmarried women or widows make convenient targets. The trial is a joke. They might throw you in water to see if you float, or sink, innocent but drowned. They might look for devil's marks, moles, birthmarks, any skin irregularity. They'll torture you until you confess to flying to Sabbaths and having sex with Satan himself. Then they burn you alive while the village watches and feels better about their problems. Even if you avoid witch trials, age brings new miseries. Menopause isn't understood, so hot flashes and mood changes are seen as possession or madness. Without children to care for, you're useless. If your husband dies, you're fighting his family for any scrap of property. Many widows end up begging or dependent on grudging charity from children who can barely feed themselves. But here's the thing that really twists the knife. Some women in other parts of the world have rights. In the Islamic world, women can own property, run businesses, initiate divorce. In some pagan societies, women are priestesses, healers, respected elders. But in medieval Christian Europe, you're livestock that can do laundry. The noble ladies you might envy, their lives are golden cages. Sure, they don't haul water, but they're married off at 12 to secure alliances, expected to produce heirs while their husbands have official mistresses. They're dressed in elaborate clothing that takes hours to put on with help, can't leave their castles without armed escort, and spend their days doing embroidery and pretending their lives have meaning. Some women find ways around the system. Widows who inherit businesses become successful merchants. Some join convents, the only place a woman can have education, authority, and freedom from constant pregnancy. But these are exceptions. Most women live and die in a cycle of pregnancy, labor, and loss. The real tragedy? You internalize it all. You believe you're worth less, that suffering is Eve's punishment, that wanting anything beyond survival is selfish. You raise your daughters to expect the same, perpetuating the cycle. You thank God for your husband who only beats you occasionally, for surviving another childbirth, for having enough food to keep most of your children alive. This is medieval womanhood. Working twice as hard for half the recognition, bearing children until it kills you, having no rights, no property, no voice. You're essential to survival, but treated as disposable. You keep families fed, clothed, and functioning while being told you're naturally inferior and probably in league with Satan. The few women who made it into history books, warrior queens, saints, scholars, were extraordinary exceptions who overcame impossible odds. For every Joan of Arc, there were millions of women whose names we'll never know, who lived and died in exhausted silence, keeping the world running while being told they were worth less than the cows they milked. Medieval women, the invisible foundation everything was built on, treated like the dirt they were buried in. Imagine living in a world where every single aspect of your existence is controlled by invisible forces you can't see but absolutely must believe in or face eternal damnation. Or the local priest, who might be illiterate and definitely hasn't bathed recently, holds the keys to your eternal soul. Where you genuinely believe that demons cause illness, saints control the weather, and that piece of moldy bread might be the literal body of Christ. Welcome to medieval religious life, where faith isn't just important, it's mandatory, and skepticism is a luxury you can't afford unless you enjoy being burned alive. Let's start with the basics. You're Christian, not because you chose to be, but because everyone is Christian, and being anything else is illegal, often fatally so. Jews exist in ghettos, subjected to periodic massacres when crops fail or plagues hit and someone needs blaming. Muslims are the enemy you've heard about but never seen, probably with horns and tails. Pagans? They're being converted with swords in the Baltic. Atheists? That concept doesn't even exist. Saying, "I don't believe in God," makes as much sense as saying, I don't believe in breathing. Your entire life is structured around the church bells. They tell you when to wake, way too early, when to work, when to pray, constantly, when to eat, and when to sleep. Miss church on Sunday? That's a fine, public humiliation, and possibly some quality time in the stocks. The church calendar determines everything. When you can eat meat, not during Lent, not on Fridays, not on various saint days, when you can have sex with your spouse, definitely not during Lent or Advent or on Sundays or feast days, so basically Tuesday afternoons in October, and when you must fast until you hallucinate from hunger. The Mass is in Latin, which you don't understand. The priest mumbles through it with his back to you, performing mysterious rituals that might be summoning God, or might be him forgetting the words and making something up. You stand the entire time. Pews are for future soft people. The sermon, if the priest bothers with one in your language, is usually about how you're definitely going to hell for that impure thought you had about your neighbor's chickens. Not in a sexual way, you just wanted to eat them, but gluttony is a sin too. Speaking of hell, let's talk about your inevitable destination. Medieval hell isn't abstract. It's described in vivid, horrifying detail. Specific punishments for specific sins. Gluttons force-fed molten gold. The lustful torn apart by demons. The lazy broken on wheels. The proud frozen in ice. Your priest describes these tortures with disturbing enthusiasm, possibly because it's the only entertainment he gets. But don't worry, there's purgatory. It's like hell with an eventual exit date. You'll only burn for a few thousand years while your sins are purged. Time off for good behavior if your relatives pay for masses to be said for your soul. It's basically a spiritual protection racket. Nice soul you got there. Shame if it had to burn for eternity. Few coins in the collection plate might help. Salvation isn't through faith or good works, it's through the 7 sacraments, controlled exclusively by the Church. Baptism, without which babies go to limbo forever. Confirmation, marriage, last rites, and most importantly, confession. You must confess your sins to the priest regularly. Yes, the same priest who everyone knows is sleeping with the baker's wife. He assigns penance, prayers, fasting, or if you're rich, building a chapel. The Eucharist is the main event. The bread and wine literally become the body and blood of Christ, not symbolically, literally. This is transubstantiation, and doubting it is heresy. You must believe that the wafer that tastes like cardboard and the wine that's mostly vinegar are divine flesh and blood. Receiving communion in a state of sin? Straight to hell. Not receiving communion? Also hell. But Christianity is just the official religion. The real belief system is a wild mix of Christian doctrine, pagan holdovers, and pure superstition that would make a fantasy novel look realistic. Every village has its own saints, usually with powers that suspiciously match the old pagan gods they replaced. Saint, whoever controls the rain. Saint, something else, protects from wolves. You pray to them more than to God because they're specialists. Relics are big business. Churches compete to have the best body parts of dead holy people. A finger bone of Saint whoever, the foreskin of Jesus. Multiple churches claim to have it, splinters from the true cross, enough to build a ship. Pilgrims travel hundreds of miles to touch these objects, believing they cure disease, ensure good harvests, or protect from evil. The fact that St. Peter apparently had 20 fingers and 3 heads doesn't bother anyone. The supernatural world is real and actively trying to kill you. Demons are everywhere, causing everything from bad weather to impotence. They enter through your mouth if you yawn without covering it. They hide in forests, crossroads, and especially in women, who are naturally more susceptible to evil influence, according to the Church. Witches fly at night, stealing babies and curdling milk. Vampires, werewolves, and revenants are real concerns. That weird neighbor? Probably a werewolf. Protection involves a complex system of prayers, charms, and rituals that mix Christianity with older magic. You wear amulets of saints, carry blessed herbs, nail horseshoes over doors. You cross yourself constantly when you wake up, before eating, when passing a cemetery, when someone mentions the devil, which is often. Holy water is sprinkled on everything: crops, animals, sick children, new houses. It's basically medieval Windex. The church provides the only explanations for natural phenomena. Earthquakes, God is angry. Eclipse, definitely the end times. Plague, divine punishment for society's sins, usually the Jews' fault somehow. This creates a worldview where you're constantly terrified of divine wrath, but also weirdly fatalistic. Why improve sanitation when disease is God's will? Why invent new farming techniques when good harvests come from prayer? Education is controlled by the church, which means it barely exists. Monks copy books, but they're mostly religious texts. The few schools that exist teach in Latin, focusing on theology. Scientific inquiry is heresy. The Bible contains all necessary knowledge. Suggesting the earth moves around the sun, that's contradicting God, and we have a nice steak prepared for people who do that. Here's where it gets really dark. The church has absolute power over your life. Excommunication means you're cut off from all sacraments, can't be buried in consecrated ground, and no Christian can interact with you. It's social and spiritual death. The church has its own courts handling moral crimes, adultery, heresy, not paying tithes. These courts can order torture, imprisonment, and death. The Inquisition, when it gets rolling, takes this to new extremes. Professional witch hunters and heresy investigators with the power to arrest, torture, and execute anyone. Their evidence? Dreams, gossip, torture-induced confessions. They're looking for devil worship, heretical beliefs, and suspicious behavior like being too clean or owning too many books. But here's the weird part. Despite all this oppression and terror, faith provides real comfort. In a world where children die constantly, where famine and war are regular visitors, where you have zero control over your life, believing that suffering has meaning, that there's a better world waiting, that saints are watching over you, it helps. The church, for all its corruption, provides community, charity, and the only social services available. Feast days break up the grinding misery of daily life. Christmas, Easter, Saints' Days, these are the only holidays you get. The church organizes mystery plays, bad theater about Bible stories, processions, and festivals. Yes, they're religious, but they're also the only entertainment, the only break from labor, the only time you eat decent food. The medieval mind doesn't separate religious and secular life. Everything is religious. Your job is holy or not. Usury is a sin, so bankers are going to hell. Your marriage is a sacrament. Your suffering is spiritual purification. There's no concept of personal faith. You believe what the church tells you to believe, or you burn. This creates a worldview that's simultaneously beautiful and terrifying. Every flower is God's creation, but every illness is either divine punishment or demonic attack. Angels watch over you, but so do demons. The world is full of meaning, but that meaning usually involves you suffering for reasons you can't understand. The real tragedy is lost potential. How many potential scientists spent their lives fearing that curiosity was sinful? How many deaths could have been prevented if people looked for natural causes instead of supernatural ones? How many women were burned as witches for knowing too much about herbs? The medieval church didn't just control bodies, it controlled minds, keeping humanity in intellectual darkness for centuries. So you live your life in constant fear of damnation, surrounded by invisible forces, following rules you don't understand in a language you can't speak, giving what little you have to an institution that tells you suffering is good for your soul. You die believing you're probably going to purgatory at best, hoping your relatives will pay for enough masses to eventually get you out. Medieval religion, where God loves you but will torture you forever if you eat meat on the wrong day, where demons cause tooth decay, and where thinking for yourself is the deadliest sin of all. We need to talk about death in medieval times, and not in a philosophical memento mori way, but in a, statistically, you're already dead way. In the Middle Ages, death wasn't a distant possibility you planned for with life insurance. It was your roommate, your coworker, and probably what you were having for dinner if the meat looked suspicious. Life expectancy at birth was around 30 to 35 years. But that's misleading because it includes infant mortality. If you made it to adulthood, you might see 45 to 50, assuming seeing was still possible after a lifetime of nutritional deficiencies and repeated head trauma from low doorways. Let's start with childhood, or as medieval parents called it, the trial period. About 30 to 50% of children died before age 5, not from exotic medieval diseases, from things like diarrhea, respiratory infections, and fell in the well again. Parents had lots of children not because they loved large families, but because they were essentially playing demographic roulette. Have 8 kids, maybe 4 survive to adulthood, 2 make it to have their own kids, and 1 might be around to close your eyes when you die at the ripe old age of had all your teeth last year. Infant mortality was so high that some regions didn't even name children until they survived their first year. Why get attached? The causes were endlessly creative. Suffocation from co-sleeping, because separate beds are for people without livestock in the room, contaminated milk, exposure, accidents, and diseases we now prevent with a quick shot. The lucky ones died quickly. The unlucky ones lingered with conditions medieval medicine made worse. But let's say you beat the odds and made it to adulthood. Congratulations. Here's your prize, a buffet of exciting ways to die. Let's explore the menu, shall we? Disease, the all-you-can-catch special. Plague is the headline act. The Black Death killed 30 to 60% of Europe's population in the 14th century. But plague had to work for that title. There was dysentery, the bloody flux, typhoid, smallpox, tuberculosis, consumption, leprosy, ergotism, from fungal contaminated grain that made your limbs fall off, and the sweating sickness, dead in hours, no one knows what it was. No antibiotics, no understanding of germs, just prayer and bloodletting, which usually sped up the dying process. Childbirth. Already covered this, but it bears repeating. 1 in 3 women died in childbirth over their lifetime. That's not per birth, that's cumulative risk. By your 7th pregnancy, you're basically playing Russian roulette with a fully loaded gun and 1 prayer. Workplace accidents. Remember those jobs we talked about? They're all trying to kill you. Farming. Scythe accidents, trampled by oxen, crushed by falling haystacks. Construction. Falling from scaffolding, crushed by stones, impaled on timbers. Blacksmith, burns, flying metal shards, chronic lung damage from smoke. Tanning, chemical poisoning from the urine and feces used in leather processing. Miller, ground to death in your own mill wheels. Every job came with its own personalized death options. Violence, murder rates were 10 to 50 times higher than modern developed countries. No police force, just personal violence and mob justice. Bar fight, knife to the gut. Property dispute, axe to the head. Looked at someone's wife, beaten to death with farming implements. And that's just civilian violence. Add in wars, raids, and the general understanding that might makes right, and you've got a society where died of natural causes. often meant naturally someone caused them to die. Famine, bad harvest, everyone dies. Too much rain, crops rot, everyone dies. Not enough rain, crops fail, everyone dies. War disrupts planting, everyone dies. Famine wasn't abstract, it was watching your children's eyes sink into their skulls while you boiled leather and bark into soup. The Great Famine of 1315–1317 killed millions. People ate grass, dirt, and each other. Cannibalism wasn't mythology, it was what happened when the alternative was watching your family starve. Execution. Justice was swift, brutal, and often wrong. Steal a loaf of bread, hanged. Poach a rabbit, hanged. Say the wrong thing about the Lord, hanged. Heresy, burned. Treason, drawn and quartered while still alive. The medieval justice system had the nuance of a sledgehammer and the accuracy of a blind archer. Medical treatment, often deadlier than whatever you were being treated for. Headache? Let's drill holes in your skull. Fever? Time for bloodletting until you pass out. Wound? Pack it with dung for that sepsis speed run. Stomach problems? Mercury smoothie coming right up. Medieval medicine had a 50-50 chance of killing you faster than your original condition. Animals, horses kicked, bulls gored, pigs ate children. Seriously, urban pigs were a menace, dogs carried rabies, and wolves were still actual threats. Even chickens could kill you if the infected scratch went septic, which it always did because remember, they treat wounds with actual feces. The elements: freeze to death in winter, heat stroke in summer, struck by lightning during storms, drowned crossing rivers because bridges were for rich areas, houses collapsed in storms, floods washed away entire villages, and fires spread through thatched roof communities like gossip through a monastery. But here's where it gets really depressing. The dying process itself. Modern death often involves hospitals, pain management, and some attempt at comfort. Medieval death? You're dying on the same straw mattress you were born on, covered in the same fleas, surrounded by the same smoke. Pain relief is a wooden spoon to bite on, and prayers you're too delirious to understand. The death rattle terrifies your family, who aren't sure if it's your soul leaving or demons entering. They might put salt on your chest to prevent possession. The priest might not make it in time for last rites, condemning you to longer purgatory. If you're dying of something contagious, your family might abandon you to die alone rather than risk infection. If you're taking too long to die, they might help you along. A pillow over the face was sometimes seen as mercy. The moment you die, the scramble begins. In wealthy families, it's about inheritance. In poor families, it's about who gets your shoes. Your body needs to be prepared quickly. No embalming, just washing, maybe, and wrapping in whatever cloth can be spared. You need to be in the ground fast because bodies decompose quickly, and nobody wants plague in the house. The funeral depends entirely on your social status. Rich people get elaborate ceremonies, poor people get a hole. The cemetery is already overcrowded, so you might be buried on top of other bodies. Give it a few years and they'll dig you up to make room for the next batch. Your bones go into an ossuary if you're lucky, scattered if you're not. But wait, even death isn't final. People in comas were sometimes buried alive. Scratches on the inside of coffins prove it. Safety coffins with bells weren't invented yet. You could wake up 6 feet under, screaming into the dark while using up your last minutes of air. The phrase "saved by the bell" comes from later centuries, but the horrifying possibility was very medieval. Grief is public and performative. Widows wear black, tear their clothes, wail loudly. Professional mourners might be hired for important funerals. But life moves on quickly. That widow needs a new husband for protection, those orphans need new parents or they'll starve. Emotional processing is a luxury no one can afford. The aftermath is just beginning. Your soul needs prayers, masses said for potentially centuries to get through purgatory. Your family pays what they can to the church for these services. If you're poor, you're on your own in the afterlife. If you died without confession, in sin, or excommunicated, you can't be buried in consecrated ground. You go into unconsecrated earth where suicides, criminals, and unbaptized babies lie. No prayers, no hope, just eternal damnation. Your possessions are distributed according to incomprehensible inheritance laws that favor males, legitimate children, and whoever can grab stuff first. Your widow might lose everything to your brothers. Your children might be split up among relatives who can feed them. Your land goes back to the Lord. Your debts? Those survive you, passed on to your family like a cursed heirloom. Here's the truly horrifying statistic. In medieval times, you had about a 50% chance of seeing your 30th birthday. Every day you woke up was a successful dice roll against death. Every meal that didn't poison you, every workday that didn't cripple you, every night that didn't freeze you, all tiny victories against the endless ways medieval life tried to kill you. And the most twisted part? This was normal. Everyone lost children, siblings, parents, spouses. The medieval heart had to be calibrated to loss. You couldn't afford to be too attached to anyone because they'd probably be dead soon. Love existed, but it came with an expiration date everyone could see coming. Medieval death wasn't a gentle slipping away in old age. It was brutal, painful, terrifying, and constantly present. It sat at your table, worked in your fields, slept in your bed. You didn't plan for retirement. You planned for which child would inherit your debts. You didn't save for the future. You hoped to survive the week. So next time you complain about your morning commute or your Wi-Fi speed, remember, you woke up today without checking if your family survived the night. You ate breakfast that won't give you ergotism, and you'll probably see tomorrow. In medieval terms, you're already living the impossible dream. Death in medieval times, not if, but when, how painfully, and whether anyone would remember to pray for your soul. So here we are, at the end of our grotesque journey through medieval life. And if you're not currently hugging your refrigerator or writing love letters to your toilet, you haven't been paying attention. We've walked through a world where everything was trying to kill you, where comfortable meant only 3 types of parasites, and where making it to 40 was an achievement worthy of legend. Let's take a moment to appreciate just how spectacularly horrible life was for the average medieval person, and why you should never ever complain about your Wi-Fi speed again. Think about your morning routine. You woke up in a bed with an actual mattress, not a bag of moldy straw that doubles as an apartment complex for insects. Your alarm was probably your phone, not church bells at 4 a.m., or a pig walking across your face. You stumbled to a bathroom, an actual room dedicated to waste elimination, where clean water appears at the turn of a handle. You didn't have to empty a communal chamber pot into the street while shouting, "Gardaloo." You sat on a toilet, used toilet paper, not moss, not your left hand, not a communal sponge, and flushed your waste away to some magical place where you never have to think about it again. Your shower? Hot water. On demand, with soap that doesn't dissolve your skin. You washed your hair with products that don't contain lye or urine. You brushed your teeth with a brush, not a twig, using paste that actually cleans rather than grinding away your enamel with brick dust. You put on clean clothes you own more than one set of, clothes without lice, clothes that have been washed in the last month. Revolutionary. Breakfast, you opened a refrigerator, a box that keeps food cold without ice cut from a frozen pond. Inside, food that won't kill you. Milk that's been pasteurized, bread without ergot fungus, meat that hasn't been hanging in a shed for 3 weeks. You can eat fruit out of season, vegetables from across the world, spices that don't cost more than your house. If something tastes off, you throw it away instead of eating it anyway because it's that or starvation. Your job? You're probably not pushing a wooden plow through rocky soil for 14 hours. You're not standing knee-deep in human waste tanning leather. You're not climbing scaffolding with rope and prayers for safety equipment. You have weekends, sick days, the radical concept that you shouldn't work literally every waking moment until your body gives out. If you're injured at work, you don't just die. There are hospitals, laws, systems designed to keep you alive rather than replace you with your eldest child. Healthcare. My God, healthcare. You have antibiotics that cure infections that killed millions, vaccines that prevent diseases that wiped out entire villages, surgery with anesthesia, not a leather strap and 4 strong men, mental health treatment that doesn't involve drilling holes in your skull or burning you as a witch, dentists who can fix your teeth instead of just yanking them out with pliers, glasses so you can see past 30, childbirth that doesn't have a 1 in 3 maternal mortality rate. Your entertainment doesn't involve watching bears get torn apart by dogs or people getting executed. You have books, millions of them, available instantly. Music from every corner of the earth in your pocket. The ability to see what's happening anywhere in the world without leaving your house. When you're bored, your options extend beyond count your lice or watch the fire and hope it doesn't go out. Your home has windows with glass, walls without gaps you can see through, a roof that keeps rain out. Heat in winter that doesn't require chopping wood at dawn. Light at night that doesn't involve squinting at a smoking candle. You can lock your door and reasonably expect not to be murdered for your shoes. Your floor isn't made of dirt. Your dinner isn't moving. The food alone should make you weep with gratitude. Fresh vegetables year-round. Meat that's been inspected, refrigerated, cooked to safe temperatures. Water that won't give you dysentery. The ability to be vegetarian without starving. Allergies and intolerances that can be accommodated instead of just killing you. Variety beyond gruel and gruel with suspicious chunks. Women can own property, choose their careers, control their own reproduction. Children have childhoods instead of being tiny adults with full work schedules. Education is available to everyone, not just noble boys who can be spared from the fields. You can marry for love, divorce if it doesn't work out, choose not to marry at all. Revolutionary concepts that would have gotten you burned at the stake. Justice, while imperfect, doesn't involve trial by ordeal. Nobody's throwing you in a river to see if you float, witch, or sink, innocent but drowned. Punishment fits the crime, more or less. Stealing bread doesn't cost you a hand. Arguing with your neighbor doesn't end in trial by combat. There are lawyers, appeals, the concept of evidence beyond that guy seems suspicious. Travel? You can go anywhere without walking, without bandits, without dying of exposure. A journey that took medieval people months takes you hours. You can communicate instantly with people on the other side of the planet. Maps are accurate. Roads are paved. Bridges mostly don't collapse. But here's what really should blow your mind. All of this, every single comfort, convenience, and life-saving innovation exists because at some point someone looked at medieval life and said, "This is unacceptable." Every vaccine, every antibiotic, every flush toilet, every refrigerator is a monument to human beings who refuse to accept that life had to be nasty, brutish, and short. The medieval world wasn't stupid or primitive by choice. Those people were exactly as intelligent as we are. They just lacked the accumulated knowledge, the technology, the systems we've built over centuries. Every medieval person who died of an infected cut had the same capacity for brilliance as the scientists who discovered penicillin. They just had the misfortune of being born before humanity figured out basic sanitation. And that's the real lesson here. We're not inherently better than medieval people. We're just spectacularly impossibly lucky. Lucky to be born after germ theory, after human rights, after indoor plumbing. Lucky to live in a time when what's for dinner isn't whatever didn't die of disease, and what's that rash isn't probably death. Every single aspect of your life that you take for granted, from your morning coffee to your expected lifespan, would seem like magic to a medieval person. The ability to flip a switch and banish darkness. The power to summon heat without smoke. Water that obeys your command. Food that doesn't fight back. Medicine that actually heals. Laws that apply to nobles. The radical idea that maybe people shouldn't die of preventable diseases. So the next time you're stuck in traffic, waiting for your latte, annoyed that your phone is at 10% battery, remember, you're living a life that medieval people couldn't even dream of. Your worst day is better than their best day. Your problems, deadlines, relationships, finding meaning, are luxury problems they couldn't afford to have because they were too busy not dying. We've spent thousands of words wallowing in the spectacular misery that was medieval life. The filth, the disease, the violence, the ignorance, the sheer grinding hopelessness of it all. But here's the thing that should really haunt you. Billions of people today still live closer to medieval conditions than to your life. No clean water, no health care, no education, no hope of escape. The Middle Ages aren't gone, they're just unevenly distributed. So maybe the real lesson isn't just gratitude for your circumstances, but responsibility to use them. Every person reading this has power medieval people couldn't imagine. The ability to learn anything, to communicate globally, to contribute to the sum of human knowledge and comfort. We're the beneficiaries of everyone who fought to drag humanity out of the Dark Ages. The least we can do is keep pulling. Medieval life was, without exaggeration, one of the worst times to be alive in human history. A perfect storm of ignorance, disease, violence, and suffering that lasted for centuries. But humans endured it, survived it, and eventually overcame it. Every comfort in your life exists because someone, somewhere, decided things could be better and worked to make it so. So go ahead. Flush your toilet with reverence. Turn on your lights with gratitude. Take your antibiotics with the solemnity of a religious sacrament. You're living in the age of miracles, surrounded by magic medieval people died trying to achieve. The only sin would be not appreciating it. Welcome to the future. It's pretty amazing here. Try not to take it for granted. And seriously, hug your toilet. It's done more for human happiness than every medieval king combined.